So I'm just going to kick off and start again. So sorry about this. So I was talking about the agenda, which you can see now on your slides, hopefully. Apologies about that. So very briefly, again, we are going to talk about the line chart, the new features and annotations that we have introduced, the Vizlib Pivot Table, which had some very interesting changes in the past 30 days that I want to highlight to you, but obviously most of you already have been using it. The Vizlib KPI object, our latest and newest extension that I'm going to show you in more detail what exactly it can do, some features, and how we also envisioned on how it will ultimately be used in the future and evolve. And that's my latest roadmap. What's next? So we have a couple of polls where we want to engage with you, get your opinion on some of the stuff, what you think is more valuable to be included in the near future, and then leave some time for Q&A. I know last time there were plenty of questions. We didn't manage to cover them all, but they're very, very interesting, which I'm sure will be relevant to most of you. So getting started. Cool. Yeah, it's working. So yeah, one of the news is obviously, Vizlib is growing. So we have two people who have joined. One of them is Lucas Lehmann, who is a junior web developer, was an intern with us last year in December, January. He was the driver behind the Sankey chart, which eventually was released in April, and who is now, working with us, still at university, almost full time. So that's good news. Very happy to have him. Also, very good news is that we have recently onboarded Paulina Qlik, who is our quality assurance engineer. So she's here to help us with release cycles, with the testing. She will start automating, helping with automating testing, and she will also be heavily involved with customer support. So some of you will at some point get in touch with her. She will be the one responding to your tickets. So yeah, be nice to her. So very exciting. Vizlib is growing, and we have obviously some more roles to be filled in September. So we hopefully will have some more news to share next month. So with this, obviously, I'm doing this almost every time, but I really want to highlight to you, our Vizlib blog posts that we are publishing almost every 2 weeks or weeks. With some interesting stuff and information around, how you can use Qlik sense, storytelling, some really, not so technical stuff that might be of interest to you to kind of like expand your horizon of what's there beyond just extensions and visualizations. So yeah, please always visit vizlib.com/blog, and that's where we also will have and announce our monthly releases, which have a tiny overview of what has changed, including like a comprehensive change log of every single extension. So stay informed and keep following us on our website. With this, I'm also very happy to announce that we are now doing an event this next week, actually, and on next Wednesday, together with Clamber, who are also a highly established extension company or consultancy, but they also have an extension arm. And together with them, we're making an extension awareness event here in London next week. I know most of you are not in London, but if you are, or if you know somebody, or if you have colleagues, please send them along. It's next Wednesday in afternoon, where we'll have some speakers from Qlik, but also, some demonstrations and some customer success stories around this. Now, this is the first of its kind, which is focusing exclusively on extensions, and the feedback has been tremendous. So we think, we will continue doing this and eventually start having similar events, starting from Europe potentially, but also eventually in the US at Connections, for example. So yeah, just to make you aware, if you are in London, please do sign up with us, meet us in person. The whole Vizlib team will be there, developers as well. So it's all very, very exciting. Right. So with this, we're coming to the gist, to the interesting part of the webinar, which are the new changes, new features. We have obviously introduced features to about 6-7 charts, but most of them are tiny, minor, formatting, borders, these kind of things. But we also introduced some really killer ones. And I would like to start with the line chart. So with the line chart, we have introduced a couple of things, very important, stack mode and annotations, and then also PDF to PowerPoint printing support. So I'm now going to get out of my slides and jump right into Qlik Sense that I'm going to drag into the screen. So you should now be able to see Qlik Sense. Brilliant, that works fine. So yeah, what you see here on the screen is, you know, standard line chart, nothing crazy, 2 metrics against it, sales value and sales value monthly change across a continuous axis. And for those of you who have not explored our line chart, you know, it's highly customizable. You can add icons, you can control you know, the symbol size. You can even control the symbol size conditionally. So, you know, if it's before a certain year or after a certain year, you can make the circles a little bit larger or smaller. And then obviously you can make this an area chart or a line chart, dotted, dashed, and so on, and also play around with opacity. But one of the important things I want to highlight now is that we have introduced the so-called stack mode. So now if you, for example, have, I need to find it, if you have, here we are, stack, cut off sales, yeah. So now, you know, you have 2 metrics here, but you will have the ability to also start to stack them. So then one and the other metric can ultimately be added on top of each other rather than having them ultimately next to them. So this is a feature which was important where you had, for example, perhaps it's better shown if I remove this and I add a second dimension to this. Let me quickly remove the cost of sales or product or channel here. And obviously you were interested not to see how the channels are performing individually, but you might also be interested to see how they are if you're looking stacked. So you can have this view, or you can actually have this view. So you can change between those two. Tiny thing, but it was important that it got included ultimately. So that's now available. So with this, I also want to show you another feature, which is actually the most important one, is the annotations. So annotations are a way for somebody to add ultimately kind of comments, but data-driven comments onto your line chart to explain different scenarios or data points of interest, right? So this is then categorized under reference objects. And here you have the ability to add an annotation. And when you add an annotation, you have to do 2 things. First of all, you need to define the value of the x-axis of the annotation. So let's say here we have the 1st of September 2011. So I'll put 01 2011 or the other way around. 70. It should not have zeros. And I think the second value is very important, is 16.08 measure value. So this is the underlying value that I've added here. And you can see here that I've now added ultimately an annotation to that particular point, which is called here title and description. Now, this is the starting. So obviously you can say, look, something happened here before the spike. So you can say that here we started our marketing activity. Okay, and with this marketing activity, you can say this was social media, effectively. And you obviously have full control over the size, font size. You can obviously just increase it a little bit, make sure it's a little bit more prevalent. But with this, you have also full control over the annotation type. So let's just start perhaps by changing the angle a little bit. So we can kind of make sure we make use of the white space here. So you can define the angle, but you can also change the type of the annotation. You can have either a simple one, you can have a line, you can have a straight line, you can even have a box here that is highlighting the data point, or even a circle effectively that is then convexically connected to it. Or you can even say, look, I'm going to add this as a title, so boom, something specific happened there. So ultimately it's there to kind of like explain some data points, be in an event. Events typically are a critical thing, or, you know, some points of highlights, lowlights. So for example, you can take your line chart and then highlight with an annotation the maximum values and the minimum values of the chart. And ultimately with this, again, you have full control of the colors, as always with Vizlib, and you can add multiple annotations to kind of explain a narrative around it. Naturally, with almost everything we have, you can show and hide the annotation depending on calculation conditions, so not always it makes sense to have it. You can make it driven off by expressions, but actually very, very cool. And so, for example, we've created a really cool demo of how you can use annotations to kind of explain, for example, the sales cycle or a cost of sales cycle here. So we kind of made up a couple of events here. But you can see this is a spike that we've added. We have done a Google promotion for marketing. We added connections, and we became platinum sponsorships. And naturally, there was TED, which was launched in July and ultimately kicked off the sales. So, just an illustration, a demo of, what can be done. And obviously, this is data-driven in the sense of, you can show and hide depending on what conditions you have. And it looks cool. It can make, add so much more value to a chart. Just make sure that you kind of control it a little bit to make sure that it's not too cluttered or vice versa, not too meaningless. With this, obviously, the last feature that we added, and some of you will be very, very happy that we are actually grabbing this, starting with this approach, is that you can now actually go here and take a snapshot of this annotations in the line chart. As a matter of fact, you can come in into the story mode and create a story, which is demo here, and you can take the annotations or the line chart in general as it is and add it to your stories here. And the cool thing is, obviously, we are always supporting stories so far, but one thing that has always been an issue, a challenge with extensions, not only with us, is let's call it Vizlib webinar, is the ability to take those stories, where you can create a really interesting narrative, but people wanting to export this to PowerPoint, for example, or PDF. So we're a very powerful tool, and we definitely recognize it. But now we've started supporting not only story mode, but also the ability to export the stories into PowerPoint, PDF. Oops, let me see if I can find it. I think it disappeared. Downloads. Oh, here it is. Right. So this is now working. This is supported, and we have managed to resolve the sort of line chart and I think for the pie chart as well, but it's not released yet. But it just shows that we are continuously trying to accommodate all those various use cases that you guys have, and to ultimately, work even closer towards integrating all our extensions to be working in all different ways that Qlik is supporting it. So yeah, these are the good news. So that is available. That is now live, and I highly encourage you to play around with it. And I want to see some really cool examples that you guys create. So with this, I'm continuing with the Vizlib Pivot Table. So obviously it was released in July, and ever since July we released it, we did a lot of changes. Naturally, when we release a new extension, we kick it out relatively limited in features to kind of see the responses, and then we do a very intense focus on bringing out a good second version. So for some of you who have already explored this, thank you very much for reporting some of the bugs around, especially around interactivity. Most of them are now resolved, but we also included some of the features that were important to you, which I want to showcase here. So before I start, very important, there was one bug which was kind of saying value is undefined. So that was resolved actually last week. So you can now safely use our conditional show and hides of our pivot table. But what we also did is we have added the ability to export the pivot table to Excel by clicking on this on the top right. So what this does effectively, it creates ultimately a formatted output of the pivot table that can be loaded directly in Excel. So it's almost like a pre-canned report, a branded report that you can then share with your colleagues via email or so on. So rather than just a data output, you can ultimately get a formatted version of it. And as you see here, even the icons, the indicators are also included in the export, which is really, really cool. So you kind of get what you see kind of export that is available here. So obviously we fixed a lot of bugs, and we will also I think that's already included, but I don't think the version I have, but it's the ability to expand and collapse columns based using right click. So as you know, some of you, I've demoed this last time, but you have here the ability to create like an ad hoc table on the fly. So now you have the ability, I don't think that's the version I have, unfortunately, sorry about that, but you have the ability to click here and, oops, go back, it's from Africa, right click on this, and then it will allow you to ultimately expand the whole column as it is. So that's now available. Sorry, I didn't have it in this version. But yeah, and with this, just to give you a little bit of a head where we're going with the pivot table. So we have obviously already included a lot of formatting options, but also very important, the indicators here. So that was the first step for us to add like dynamic indicators with color coding to supplement the metrics. But what we will also do here is we will introduce progress bars, mini charts in the near future, so people can ultimately create very interesting trellis charts, for example, where you have line charts across a set of dimensions and months. So that's coming next. Another very important item that is coming next is the ability to pick and select columns a little bit more dynamically than via filters. So this is just still in demo, and we've developed it, we're testing it, but the ability is to go on the right-hand top right and select from a list of dimensions and measures, and being able to, deselect them on the fly and add them again. So, and that will be something that, as you see, you can interactively create your table without necessarily having to go the way to create a data island, for example. The idea is to go to the left, you can position it at the top, right, or on right click when you go to the top right, and it gives you the ability to create a custom report. So once that is out, that will be kind of the version 1 of the pivot table custom selectors. And then the next step would be give someone the ability to save configuration of measures or dimensions, either as a bookmark or a sort of as favorite. So ultimately giving you the ability to create custom reports and have the user create and store their own default views for their own consumption, even to the extent that those views and bookmarks can be saved with the rest of the crew. Still trying to figure out how exactly we're going to solve this, but this is a little bit what we're looking at for the pivot table, and obviously any feedback that you guys have. So with this, I am now continuing, or perhaps actually, yeah, very quickly, I wanted to show you what I call the P&L reporting hierarchies, very important. Let me quickly demonstrate that, because I think that's a very, very, very powerful way of creating P&L reports using our Vizlib table. So let's say if you have a case here where you add a month as a dimension, right? And then you add, you want to add a report, right, across those months. And you want to add the number of customers. So the first step, I would go here and I will put the columns to the right. And I will add a second measure, which might be the number of products. And then a third measure, which is custom accounts receivable, and so on. So I will take this, I will put the measures into rows, and I will hide them now that they're here. So let's quickly apply this, and let's go to the pivot table settings and appearance, and let's hide them here. So now what we wanted to do, the idea is you can start some sort of a hierarchy. You can say, for example, here, all right, just for the sake of this, number of customers, but let's multiply this by 200. right? And that's, let's say this is a total of the 3 lines that sit above. So one thing that you'll do here is you can go and you can change the font style to be bold and apply this to the whole cell. I think that should be always also included here. Or perhaps I don't have a version, but yeah, think of it that the whole ultimately a row becomes ultimately a total, and then you can go down and you can start adding additional padding here. So you can, oops, number of customers. Okay, sorry, I had to give it a distinct name. So let's call it number of customers total. Let's put actually this 0, and let's take the other 2 and let's put this 2 and give it a little bit of padding like 5, or a little bit stronger. Let's make this 10. Perfect, 10, and another 10 here. And by doing so, you see a little bit what's happening on the screen, right? You're like creating a little bit like a nice like hierarchical report where you see, all right, the first 3 lines roll up into the second line. And now that you kind of have that report for customers, you can say, right, now I want to introduce an empty line, which does nothing. Let's give it a character. Make sure that we don't even have a title. Yeah, sorry. Perfect. So that's like an empty line. So now this fifth measure could be, you know, now a percentage of items. And this way you can kind of like start creating your own ultimately very bespoke report using the Vizlib Pivot Table. I will do a separate YouTube video on this, on how to exactly create this with a couple of really, really cool examples. But I think you get the idea that you can create your custom reports a little bit here, and again, export them to Excel really nicely. So, you know, it becomes very, very valuable. So yeah, with this, thank you very much. Let's continue, because I want to have enough time to spend on the powerful and most exciting part of today, which is, ta-da, the Vizlib KPI Designer, originally meant to be called the Vizlib KPI. And to give you a little background to this, when we started looking at the KPI, we had discussions. We were like, okay, what's the perfect KPI structure? Is it a chart? Is it main metric, second metric? Where do you position the main metric and the second metric? We obviously, you know, looked at some established KPI object there in the community, like the Climber KPI, eCurve KPI, Simple KPI, and you know, all of them had their joys. Some people liked one or the other. So we kind of quickly established, you know, Vizlib is known for being customizable and, you know, being able to tick off every requirement. So with the KPI, there's no way to kind of force you into one set. Look, this is how it's going to look like, deal with it. So instead we said, let's take a step back and provide our user base instead with a designer object. So what we did is we created the so-called layer principle that I will showcase to you in 1 second, which will allow you to pixel-perfectly create any KPI object you've ever seen on the internet, you ever wanted, and ultimately put it on your ClickSense dashboard and have it responsive. So let me go directly into it, and you will see what I am talking about. Right, so this is a blank sheet on our example app, by the way. You can download it, so everything that I'm showcasing today is available also for download. And let's say you want to start building your KPI object. You drag it into the screen, and you know, it's done very, very user-friendly. So it's actually saying, look, you should click on add a layer. And you can see here on the right-hand side that visualization layer was added to the KPI object. So with this, you can now select one of the 7 types that we have: a text, an icon, an image, a line, and I'll come to that, a bar chart as a chart, line chart, or even bullet chart. So let's start with an icon. So that was added here, and you can see you can pixel perfect position it where you want on the canvas, right? You can actually now, you see there's like a convenience menu here, which says, all right, you can add a new layer, you can remove it, or you can even clone it to create a second one. Obviously, if you've used the table and pivot table, you see that you can actually change this icon to something else. You can make it conditional, you can change the color depending on conditions, and so on and so on. If you have, by the way, if you have troubles positioning one layer next to the other, we have something that we call snapping. So if you click on this, you see now that it's actually defining, oh, okay, now they are aligned. or actually horizontally aligned, and so on and so on. So yeah, very useful features for you to if you're having struggles with positioning the layers accordingly. So let me deactivate it for now. So you can add an icon. You can obviously add a metric to this. So here's type some text. Let me make it a little bit smaller. You see it's responsive. I can add here, let's say 0.03, and you can then start formatting it nicely. You can say, look, I want to see this as a percentage. You put it there. So let's say this is my main KPI. Let me add another layer to this, text layer, and then give it a name. Call it main KPI. Make it perhaps not gray. Let's give it a little bit more interesting color of blue, and make this a bit smaller. Put it there. Move the other ones a little bit to the bottom. And now I will have my main KPI with an icon next to it. Obviously, you can use Qlik expressions, but you can now also start adding charts to it. So I can say, look, I want a bar chart here at the right. Now, these are obviously test data, just so you can see how it would look like. You can define your dimension here and your measure and even the colors, so you can ultimately define your own bar chart as you want it. Let's make this a little bit smaller and put it here at the top. By the way, if you go through a bar chart, you see you have full control over all the various settings. So you can actually hide the settings, the labels, you can show them, you can show a grid. You have full control over it, like with any other Vizlib object, but we kind of try to predefine it a little bit to make it helpful for you. And with a line chart, you can also add a line chart here and put it here at the very, very bottom. Let me position that correctly. Here we are. Right, again, same story. We can remove the x-axis labels here to make it a little bit nicer. And one thing, that was very, very important for us was also the ability to kind of separate the KPI objects. So that's why we introduced the line object, right? So if I come in here, I add a layer and a line layer, I can now add a nice layer here that kind of like organizes your screen into, the different segments that you have. And obviously the last object that I want to introduce is the bullet chart layer that you have here. And let's see if you can even put it vertically. You can actually not, but it doesn't matter. It is actually very helpful if you have it here and you can put it, let's say here, or let's put it at the top. And so you understand a little bit. So this way you can kind of like custom create your KPI object as you want it. And the cool thing is that it's responsive. So you see, it's changing according to available screen size. You don't have to worry at all whether you're using this on the iPad or and so on and so on. So with this, we can create some really funky and cool, amazing KPIs. And very important is, obviously, since we are Vizlib, we don't forget about interactivity and making this dynamic. So you can actually, on the whole KPI objects, apply actions. So if you can, for example, somebody clicks on the whole KPI object, you can, either apply a selection, navigate to a sheet, so you can use it a little bit to navigate between different sheets on your app. You can apply bookmarks, open URLs, and so on and so on. Or you can apply even multiple actions, right? Make 2 selections. If you don't want that, you can even go one level deeper. So you can say, if somebody clicks on the bar chart, then something is happening. So you can actually even apply actions on individual layer level. So if somebody clicks on the bar chart, you can then set a variable, which then kicks off something else on the right-hand side. And I have a very cool example for this. So very, very powerful. For the Qlik view fans of you, we kind of implemented this feature. If you don't like dragging and dropping the object, you want to have a little bit more control, you can obviously also use the X positioning here. And that is, by the way, relative, so in percentage effect. Cool thing, obviously, you can show or hide a layer based on expressions. So with this, you can show a chart or hide a chart, even based on different calculation conditions. We gave you all the tools. We want to see some really cool implementations now from you guys. The response we have received so far was tremendous, with lots of cool examples even have been created. So, there's really, some, value in this, I think, more than we originally anticipated. So, for example, a use case that we have is this one here that some people have been using. So let's say you have a dashboard, a sheet, where you have multiple KPIs at the top. And you can actually, using actions, you can click to the KPIs. And when you click on new cases, I can see the chart corresponding to new cases. If I click on open cases, I see this chart. So you can actually use this as a combination of navigation, but also to improve the user experience ultimately with this. And that could be either changing and controlling a chart, or ultimately also changing sheets, for example, doing a drill down. So, this is a really cool example that we've seen, and we kind of like replicate it here for demo purposes. If you are too bored, so some of you might be scared, saying, look, I don't have design skills, I'm too scared building my own KPI, it takes a lot of time making sure it's positioned correctly, and so on and so on. So you can say, fine, don't worry. For the lazy people among you, you actually can use a top-down approach by taking a KPI object, and instead of adding individual layers, you can choose from one of our available presets. So you click on the presets, and you have a list of available cool KPI designs that you can choose from, be it a chart with metrics, or ultimately, a list of mini KPIs. And let's say you take the financial KPI here, you click on it, and it's being generated for you. As a matter of fact, it's generating the layers here. So you can then start modifying the ones individually and play around with it. So, very powerful. There's a lazy mode and there's the cool geeky mode. Really up to you which one you want to use. And with this, naturally you can create some really cool examples. Let me show you some of them that we have created. Obviously, this is a presets that we just illustrated, and I think this is one example, really cool, where we have the various type of KPI objects, and the other one is this one. And these are the presets that we have available. So one question here, and I actually came up with this idea suggestion today. So I'm going to start a poll asking you guys, have you ever used Qlik Sense on your phone before? So actually here on your iPhone. I'm not talking about mobile iPads, I'm talking literally on your phone. So I'm going to ask a poll quickly to see what you guys think. So you should be able to kind of like vote now for the next, let's say, 5-10 seconds. And we will see, what your experience has been so far with using this on your phone, not on mobile. iPad looks tremendously nice, but I'm looking at the phone. So we have 70% voted. There are some lazy people on the call, who I still encourage. There we go. Let's wait 5 more seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, I'm closing this. Right. So 60% of you have not used it on the phone, and 8% admitted they don't like it, and 35% have used it on the phone. So the big problem with using Qlik Sense on the phone is that it's not just shrinking it, it's changing into a different cart menu effectively. So I'll try to replicate this perhaps with a standard chart. So let's say this is your dashboard, and you try to look at this on your phone. Open it. Here we are, right? So now we go on, let's say, on the iPad, by the way, it looks tremendously nice, no problem at all. But if you go, let's say, on your iPhone X, it becomes really messy to kind of navigate to it. So you have the filters at the top, the pivot table doesn't look nice, you have icons here, this doesn't work. However, with the KPI object, this actually changes now. So because we have the KPIs, you can actually design your KPIs in such a way that they're looking much more nicer on your phone. So if I change this to an iPhone X, let's go to analysis mode, you see that the KPI, because it's responsive and resizing, it is ultimately taking up the space on your phone. So actually you can create a list of KPIs of an app and then have the user join, and then ultimately just scroll down and nicely just go through it, which is, in my view, a new type of, doing dashboarding effectively for this, and ultimately enabled with the Vizlib KPI Designer. So, highly encourage you to explore this and to, ultimately let us know your thoughts. Please bear with us if you find bugs. We're working on some of them now, so we're going to release a new version at the end of this week, a more stable one. But hopefully keen to hear some more thoughts around that. So By the way, just to give you a little bit idea where our heads are going with the presets. So obviously we've defined some presets here that are actually nicely looking. We are going to launch a competition to see what the community came up with, and we will add those presets to the list of available ones. But long term, let's say in the next 5-6 months, we also want to give you the ability to define presets for your organization and then upload them as a standard to the KPI object. So for example, to make sure that you always have the same style of KPIs for, let's say, if you are, a big corporation which has red as its main color, so that it's ultimately following the same style. So this is something that we want to support in the near future, what we will call saved configurations. So ultimately make sure that people are up to speed and they use the same styles. So with this, I'm now moving over to the roadmap. So what is next? What is happening? Obviously, we have now released 16 extensions, so that is, admittedly, it becomes harder to release new extensions because we need to take care of new feature requests on the existing ones, but we're managing as the team is growing. The next thing that is going to be in our focus is going to be sheet menu with a release date in August and in October, and I'll come to that in 1 second. But also very important topics: printing to PDF, PowerPoint from stories. Solved it for the line chart, we solved it for the pie chart. We do it one by one for every single extension. It's going to take a while. It's not easy. We need to refactor, almost redevelop our extensions to support that, unfortunately. But with this, also Qlik theming, we will start to support this. And like last time, I created a poll, but I would like to also involve you in a second with this. But let's go a little bit into more detail into the sheet menu. So the idea behind the sheet menu is, and some of you know this already, and I've been talking about this, I guess, for a while now, is we want to give you the ability to create a really nice navigation panel. So at the top of Qlik Sense app that allows you to organize your sheets or improve the user experience by giving the user the ability to navigate between predefined sheets that you have there. And it gives it ultimately a more web app look. So instead of going building mashups, you can actually build something which looks like a mashup, but it makes sense just by dragging and dropping. So that's the idea. That's already settled. We'll start with this in the next 10 days. But we anticipate to make quick progress on this because we already know exactly how we want to approach this. So that's going to be next, hopefully released in October, not too late, so I can present it on my next webinar. But yeah, you will have a burger menu and a navigation tab ultimately. Very, very needed extension, but we want to make sure we covered some other things first before we tackle this. So we reprioritize some stuff on our roadmap. With this, I kind of want to involve you, and I want to ask you 2 questions. One of them is around theming. So obviously theming was introduced in February release, which allows you to change the colors collectively for the whole app, which works nicely with native objects, but for extensions, it's like, wow, right and left. We have some of your customers trying to implement it and use it, but I kind of want to get your opinion by launching another poll, whether or not you guys are using theming, you are planning to use theming, or would you want to use Vizlib with theming together? Obviously, as I always say, we are driving all our roadmap based on customer requests, and based on that, we kind of want to establish, look, is it worth it to now say, okay, less features, let's focus on theming, or let's do theming, but one by one, a little bit slower. So I'm going to give this another 10 seconds to make sure people vote, but we already got some very interesting results. And I'm closing the poll in 2, 3, 1. Cool, thank you. So yeah, 55% are not yet using this theming. That's interesting, so it's good. Probably because you're not on February yet. For those of you who are still in September or November last year, please do upgrade. Some of them are using it. So no, thank you very much for this one. And a last poll I wanted to do is obviously around roadmap. So obviously the sheet menu is now fixed. That's going to be next. But after that, we're obviously a little bit flexible. We know the combo chart is much wanted, the waterfall from some of our colleagues in New Jersey, but also sliders. So I kind of want to conclude before I finish the session, like what would you like to see after a Vizlib sheet menu as the next extension after that? By the way, the results of the polls will be made available to you afterwards, and also will be made available during the recording, I think. So please do vote, and always keen to hear your thoughts. Admittedly, you know, Slider is going to be an easy extension, Waterfall a little more difficult, but we have some really powerful stakeholders who have some good ideas on how it should be implemented, and you know, are involved in feedback rounds as well. So nice. So we're getting a lot of vote participation this time for this one, which is great. So I'm going to give this another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and closing. So brilliant. So results are in. So yeah, we have 50% are for the combo chart. Okay, not 50%. Sorry, you can click on multiple charts. But the top winner is the combo chart with 50%. Then you have the slider also with 52% wanting it, and then the waterfall charts, and then yeah, more features on existing charts. And I know some of you, we have some open tickets. We're looking at them, and you know, that's why we're expanding the development team, to make multiple things in parallel. Cool, nice. With this, I am. We still have 10 minutes left, so I hopefully left enough time to kind of engage in some questions that you might have. So with this, thank you very much for listening in so far. By the way, the recording will be made available on YouTube later on today with a link, so you can share with colleagues. But with this, I kind of want to invite you to now write into the chat that you have and ask any questions that you have. And I will read them out loud. I will not mention your name, keep them anonymous, but I will answer them for the majority. So we have, okay, cool. That's one. We have about 20 questions already. So cool. So starting with the one, are annotations dynamic, or do they need to be added within the app one by one? So it needs to be added one by one. They're not dynamic. They're not driven by data. There might be some scope to extend our features to ultimately do so in the future, but we have not yet received that feedback. We want to see how you're using it, but I understand you might want to have one annotation and then have a dimension and then multiply the annotation against your line chart. So this is not yet possible. There's one annotation, you need to manually add multiple ones, but if you find a compelling use case, please share it with us, and perhaps it's not even too hard to implement. Another question is, does Vizlib support end printing? Yes, it does. So we have made a very extensive exercise back in June to support all our objects with end printing, and they're tested. We need to make sure that you use the offline mode, even though the online mode works as well, but you need to set up your end printing server in a certain way. However, you also need to make sure that you're using end printing 18+ and our latest versions of Vizlib extensions as well. There's another questions, and I know PDF PowerPoint for the Vizlib table. On our roadmap, this is the most sought one printing feature, the most valuable one as well. So I know if we solve this, we will win another 10 customers on the spot. We already have one person looking into this. Admittedly, it's the most difficult chart to implement for printing because, again, of needed workarounds. We're working on this. We already have started. I can't give you an ETA, but we are equally concerned because we have several customers who need this to become customers. So we're highly incentivized to solve this, especially for the table. The charts can wait later on, but obviously get the rest of them as well. But we're working on this. So question around the waterfall. We're not driven by the poll, but definitely before the end of the year. Whether or not it's going to happen after the sheet menu, we don't know. Perhaps we're going to prioritize the combo chart. But yeah, keep us posted, keep following us, and obviously we want to see you how it's being followed. So do you have plans for click and drag lasso selection for Vizlib extensions? We do already have it implemented, so it's available on the Vizlib scatter chart if you want to. So we already have it there. We don't think the lasso makes more sense outside of the scatter chart. But if you have that case or another chart that you're missing the lasso, let us know. Give us a ping and we will include this. So there is a question around Vizlib container support for PowerPoint PDF storytelling. So the challenge with container is that it's ultimately embedding other charts. So you're not really taking a snapshot of the container. You want a snapshot of the object that is within the container. So having said that, that is currently not possible in QlikSense. So technically speaking, if you take a snapshot, it will still not take a snapshot of the underlying object. I'm not sure to what extent it will be possible to implement that. I wonder whether it'll be possible to take a snapshot of the embedded chart in the container instead as a workaround, but it's more like a conceptual limitation. The container just contains charts. It's not a chart itself. That perspective, if that makes sense. So alternative dimensions and measures for some Vizlib extensions. We have started implementing this in the bar chart, the Sankey chart, the pie chart, the scatter chart, and now we are actually working on the heat map next. So that will be released hopefully in the next 2 weeks, if not even sooner. And the person who needs it the most will be notified effective immediately once that is available. Is there an address to give us feedback on Vizlib extensions? Yes, support@vizlib.com. Please send us any query you have around it, and we will ultimately, we have an internal ticketing system. We put bugs at one corner, feature requests on the other one, and then we tag them across the chart. So we have a full pipeline, like full automated, which works really nicely. So give us all your ideas via support, and that will be our main communication channel. So there's another question. Activate sheet on container is a requested action while you're waiting for the sheet menu. And that is, I understand, it's a very compelling request. And we had this also before. However, to avoid technical debt and you using charts for other purposes than they're meant to be used, we avoided to use the activate sheet in the container. So as such, please wait for the sheet menu. That will be available in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So, and then you'll be able to use it in the way that we intended it to have you use it. Which brings us to the point, right? So for example, we have now a Vizlib KPI object was released. We saw some tickets or some concern, some feedback generally, where somebody built a table out of the Vizlib KPI object, where perhaps not really intended. I mean, it looks nice, obviously. Keep it short if you can, but use a table for this. There has been a concern, a bug around delta cache issues with our Vizlib table in the past month or so. Good news is that's resolved. I think we released it last Thursday or Friday. If you're using the offline mode, make sure you download it and please do test it. This is resolved now, actually. So exactly, okay, I just got confirmation that the delta cache issue was resolved for one of our customers. So it should be working. If not, give us a shout. Another question is exporting to Excel formatted. So that's available on Pivot Table, which was great. Admittedly, it was easy to implement this in the Pivot Table because we just have indicators. We don't have mini charts. Question is, are we going to implement exporting in a formatted way from the Vizlib table as well? We plan to. There's a challenge around the mini charts. How do you export mini charts into a table, into Excel format, to export images? We need to look at this. It's not as easy with Vizlib table because also the way Vizlib table is one of our most advanced extensions with all the features it has. But we're looking at this as well. So we have one more question around: can we use QlikSense Cloud with Vizlib? Unfortunately, not. Well, technically, it could be implemented tomorrow, but Qlik doesn't allow extensions on cloud, so unfortunately, no. But that will change at some point when, I don't know, we're ready. We could deploy a Vizlib to Qlik Cloud tomorrow, but it's up to Qlik ultimately, unfortunately. So then we have another question around our roadmap for 2020. What about 2019? That was kind of missed. But just to give you an idea, we are currently having a lot of strategic discussions also with other vendors, other big players out there. So where ahead is going is, before we kind of talk about the future, I don't want to distract anybody, but we're going to release waterfall, combo chart, slider, and the basic stuff. The basic needs to be there. Stuff that we already are working on or start to work on very soon is stuff like commenting on charts, commenting on our tables or pivot tables. So commentary as a general function across different charts, commentary on line chart, commentary on bar chart, annotations of commentary, for example, that are user driven. So that's a topic that we're looking at. Another topic is alerting. So when you're looking at your charts, to be notified when some things, conditions are changed, and whether notified within the chart or outside via email, or send a notification to somebody of your interest. So a little bit around the social engineering kind of aspect around collaboration, but in a much more Facebook kind of way, is stuff that we're looking at. So and these will be features that will be made available for the whole library rather than just one chart at a time. So, but again, no promises, voice low, it will come. We are obviously, hiring, growing the team, and we will have some really, really exciting stuff for 2019. But to avoid any distractions, and we're focusing on basic charts for now, but obviously we haven't slept. We will expand this as well. Cool, let's look. So we have, yes, so we have one request, and that is actually a very valid one, which is coloring by expression on our charts. And when I talk expression, I don't mean measure, but being able to define like color mix 1, color mix 2, and that is actually available on the line chart already, and we will include it in the pie chart and the heat map and the rest. So it's going to be a collective thing. When I don't know, but yeah, we're going to prioritize it. I know you guys need it, and others need it as well. So we just need to get our heads straight. And that's the reason, by the way, why we start with the sheet menu in 2 weeks, to have 2 weeks to clean up a little bit some of these basic stuff before we get too distracted with new features. So yes, and yeah, Jonathan, that's exactly what I was talking. So using color mix as RGB values, and have ultimately colors within tables or other charts being driven off by Qlik expressions as well. So that's the one that we wanted to introduce also in the pie chart and the heat map. So sorry I mentioned your name. I hope you don't mind. With this, cool. So I'm going to take off 2 more questions. One more question actually, because we're already over time. And we have, please make sure that the sheet menu will work. Sorry, yeah, so around the sheet menu, make sure that it's fully responsive. We will do so, absolutely. So yeah, very keen to also get first feedback once we release it. And I think most of you have no more questions. Let me look down. Okay, so with this, if I haven't answered your question, apologies for this. Yes, so the question is, will there be different designs for a sheet menu? And obviously, you'll be able to color it, you'll be able to change it. To show you perhaps here, I've popped up the website how we were envisioning it. So this is an example of 10 different like menu templates that you can achieve. So this is one responsive one. You can have it as tabs. You can have a drop down. You can have different categories. So we will kind of go in this direction and implement hopefully most of those that will allow you. And the idea is that this will ultimately replace the whole top banner here and make this almost like a document extension. So it will look like a web app and make it look sexy, which will ultimately lead to business adoption. Cool, guys. If we have missed your question, very, very sorry. Please follow up if you want to, and we will have a look at it together. Aside from this, always keep in touch, follow us on social media, and yeah, thank you very much for your time and your questions and the attendance on the polls. That was very, very interesting to hear your opinions here, and we will make sure to put this video also on YouTube so you can share it if you liked it. thank you very much, and keep in touch, and see you when we see you. Some of you we're going to meet in person in the next couple of weeks, so I'm excited to do so in Copenhagen. Thank you very much for attending, guys, and we'll keep continuing. Speak to you soon.